Hello, everyone. My name is Conrad on behalf of CameraStuff. Hope you're doing fantastically well. Today, we're going to talk about how I got a couple of shots. So these guys in particular. Yep. So during the course of today's presentation, I'm just going to show you how I achieved these specific shots. So before we get into that, I'm just going to give it a bit of time just to allow more people to join before we jump right into it. Okay, so I see a couple of people joining already. Hope you're doing fantastically well. So I'm just going to give it a minute or two. In the meantime, if you have any questions to ask during this presentation, you're welcome to do so in the comment section. So as a starter, if you have joined, please tell me where you're from and give me a wave in the comment section just so I can see everything is working. Hello, Isak. Hope you're doing very well. Okay, so if you're listening in, if you're in the comment section, please do say hello. Tell me where you're from. Okay, so as I said, I'm just waiting for people to join before we jump into the deep end of all of this. Hello, Eugene from Heidelberg. Hello, Isak from Vanderbijlpark. And Dylan saying hello. Hello, Dylan. All right, so got a good chunk of people in already. All right, so as mentioned, I'm just going to show you how I achieved these three images in particular. Now, the magic behind what has been done here is a light modifier known as an optical snoot. Now, an optical snoot is something like a traditional snoot, but it has a couple of optics built into it. So you have an optic built within the body and an external focusable lens, a lens that you can use to focus or defocus a projection of light. So with the optical snoot, you have a lens built inside of the body, and then you have an external lens that you can use to focus or defocus the projection of light. Now, an optical snoot, when used in combination with what are known as gobos, so gobos being short for go-between optics. So gobo is like a light stencil. It's like a stainless steel it's like a stainless steel little disc that you place inside of the optical snoot, and it has a shape cut out of it. So whatever the shape may be it a heart shape or a block shape or a Venetian blinds or foliage, whatever it may be, you will cast that projection onto your subject or backdrop. Okay, so you can see at CameraStuff, we have a big variety of these different gobos available. So as mentioned, whatever the shape may be, that is the projection that you're going to cast through the optical snoot, and the shape will be casted on your subject or backdrop. So with it, you can create a variety of interesting effects, and I'll show you exactly how I went about achieving these shots. So with the optical snoot and a different gobo placed in every shot, you can see, I can do some creative stuff with it. It's going from heart shapes and star shapes, these circle shapes and rectangular shapes, etc., etc. So just to go back to what we have available, so at CameraStuff, we do have a whole bunch of these different gobos available. All right, so just going to show you a video as to how that works. So just give me a moment. It's going to play right now. All right, so by placing different gobos within the optical snoot, you can project different shapes onto your subject. And I'm just going to show you the different types of optical snoots that you get available. All right, so you get many different types of optical snoots, but broadly speaking, they do the same thing. One example is an optical snoot that uses interchangeable lenses, specifically Canon EF lenses. So with this optical snoot, it does not include an external lens. So if you're a Canon user, you can use any of your Canon EF lenses. Important to say that, Canon EF, not EFS. If you're going to use an EFS lens is going to vignette just a little bit. So you're going to need to use the Canon EF lens once designed for full frame. All right, so if you're a Canon user, you're in luck. You can just use any of your Canon lenses. If you're not a Canon user, well, you just need to acquire one. Luckily, you can use a cheap second-hand lens with this as well. So I'm not a Canon user, but luckily I collect old vintage cameras, and one of them happens to be a Canon. So I just stole one of those lenses. All right, so this particular optical snoot does not include an external lens, but you can use any Canon EF lens with it. So this option is cheaper, especially if you are a Canon user already, or if you can buy a second-hand Canon lens. This is not a bad option whatsoever. All right, so here's a different type of optical snoot, one with a fixed lens. So the lens is built into the body itself. So it's a prime lens. It's something like a 60 millimeter thereabouts. These are great because it has everything that you need to get going. But the problem is it being a prime lens, you can't expand or decrease the size of the projection itself. So if you want to create a bigger shape in a manner of speaking, or a smaller shape onto your subject, you physically need to move the light closer or further away from your subject. So luckily with a Canon lens, if it is multi-zoom, like an 18-55, for example, you can make the shape bigger or smaller from one position of the light. Whereas with these, yes, it's great that it has the lens built inside of it already, but being a prime lens, if you want to make the shape bigger or smaller, you have to physically move the light itself. All right, so this is the Godox optical snoot system. This is an example of an optical snoot that has its own dedicated interchangeable lenses. So these lenses that you can buy for it, you can't use it for anything else except for the optical snoots. But I do like this optical snoot system because it has a lot of accessories for it. So depending on how you want to craft the light, it has accessories available beyond the gobos themselves. So plenty of options with the Godox snoot system. Okay, so I have a couple of the optical snoots right next to me. So let me just get my face back. All right, so this is an example of the optical snoot that uses a Canon lens. So you just detach the Canon lens from the body itself. And as I said, you can use any of the Canon lenses. So this is the one I have that was attached to one of my vintage cameras, and it's just a normal kit lens. So this one specifically is the 18-55 maximum f5.6 aperture, which matches, by the way, it matches what lens you use with this, specifically in regards to the maximum aperture. So if you have a lens with a maximum aperture of 5.6, it's going to restrict a lot of light. If you have a lens with a maximum aperture of 1.4 or 1.8 thereabouts, it's going to pass through a lot of light. So with this one specifically, maximum aperture of 5.6 is going to constrain the light by, if my mathematics are correct here, by 32 times. And I'll show you an example of that just in a moment. Okay, let's just show you again. This is your optical snoot. And with it, you can attach any Canon lens to it. So for example, a kit lens. This is the gobo itself. So the gobo holder, you just slide the gobo itself into it. Come on, go in. Yeah, and a gobo holder just goes in there into the optical snoot body. Got a couple of magnets in here that do hold the gobos in place. Have some other examples of gobos here. So as you can see, it's just a stainless disc with a shape cut out of it. Whatever that shape may be, you're going to cast that onto your subject. Okay, so this is the Godox one. So comprised of a few individual parts. So firstly, the lens. Oops. Yeah, so the Godox optical snoot system uses its own dedicated lenses. All right, so this can't be used for anything else, just for this optical snoot system. They have a 60 millimeter, an 85 millimeter, and a 150 millimeter, I believe. So 3 dedicated interchangeable lenses for this optical snoot system. So depending on how big your focus or your focal length needs to be, you can just swap the lenses around. Okay, so just slide the lens into the front here. Now, if you want to use this with a bones type of light, so any light with a bones accessory mount, you're going to need this piece. So this is the bones adapter for this optical snoot system. So this called the Godox SA17. This you'd need for any Godox, any light with a bones accessory mount. Okay, and just complete the system like that. Okay, so that's the Godox optical snoot. All right, so got a couple of questions. How does this attach to different lights in the Godox range? Do you get an attachment specific to the light? All right, so hopefully you already answered your question. So for the Godox system, you need the Bowens adapter. So with the Bowens adapter, you can use the projection head and a lens, and you can complete a Godox optical snoot system with it. Okay, in regards to the Godox optical snoot, Godox themselves have advised us not to use it with strobes, but you can use it with strobes. We've tested a whole bunch of them. So you can use like a Godox 8600 BM, you can use speed lights with a Bowens attachment as well. You can use the 8200, 100, 300, 400. Now, there are a couple of strobes you cannot use. The 8600 Pro, unfortunately, you cannot use with the Godox system whatsoever. There was something else. Yeah, so a couple of normal studio strobes as well, because the flash tube and the modding light is a bit too clunky. The Bowens attachment doesn't fit over it whatsoever. And I think I have a video of that. Hey, yes, I do. All right, so if you are interested in the Godox system, please do give us a call, and we can make sure that whatever you have is compatible with the Godox system. However, for most other types of optical snoots, for example, this can be used with anything with a Bowens attachment. So it has the little Bowens mount here. So if you have a light with a Bowens adapter, this will work. Okay, just to reiterate, if you want to use the Godox system specifically, just give us a call just to make sure whatever you have is compatible with it in the first place. All right, so thank you for your questions. If you have any more questions, please do ask so in the comment section. All righty, so, sorry, I'm just going to get my slide back. That's not my slide. Okay, so we're going to go to our first series of images. So what I used here was just an optical snoot, obviously, with the iris diaphragm projection. So that is the gobo where you can adjust the size of the circular shape. And then I used a fill-in light with a gel. So these are some edited results. I'm just going to show you a couple of raw files as well, just to show you I didn't cheat. All right, so with the optical snoot projected onto the model and a fill-in light with a gel, I just filled in the areas around her with the colored effect. And I'll show you the setup just in a moment, just to show you the raw files. And also I should mention the backdrop I used was a white PVC. All right, so this was basically the light setup. So the optical snoot with the Godox 8200, so that was used to project the circle shape onto the model. And then I bounced a speed light off the ceiling. Now I'll show you why I did that, but just to give you an indication as to what the lighting setup looked like. So key light with optical snoot aimed at the model, and a fill light with a magenta gel that was bounced off the ceiling. All right, so let me show you a quick video. Okay, so this was me in my studio. I'm just going to pause here. Okay, so this is what it looks like basically without anything else put on. So it's just the key light with the optical snoot. So you can see it's totally dark where the projection isn't illuminated, obviously. So here I used a couple of LEDs just for the sake of illustration, for showing you how everything works live. You can use flashes, you can use LEDs, you can use your speed lights as well. It's just a point I want to make. So I'm going to try my very best to say that, what type of gear I specifically use, but whatever you have, we can make it work for you. All right, so in this particular example, I used LEDs. Okay, just to show you that you can adjust the front lens if you want to focus or defocus the projection. And with the iris diaphragm gobo, you can increase or decrease the size of the gobo itself. Okay, so I'm going to walk over and I'm going to switch on the fill-in light. So that's just a second light placed from the opposite end. All right, so with second light switched on, so the reason I didn't aim for light directly at the model is because you can see a second shadow. So you can see a second shadow on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, that's obviously the shadow from the key light. Now, I didn't want this double shadow whatsoever. I don't think it looks pleasing whatsoever. So what I did simply was to bounce the light off the ceiling, and that got rid of the shadow completely. So just with a tilt of the flash head, bouncing it off a white ceiling, so you can see that second shadow just completely disappearing. Now, here's the magic. My old favorite shell sheets. So obviously, you want to use gaffer tape to attach it to the reflector dish. But here I just place it on for the sake of demonstration. And you can adjust the lighting to add whatever intensity of color you want. So I'm switching from the dark blue purplish color to the magenta. So as I said, you obviously want to gaffer tape that onto the reflector dish. But as I said, just for the sake of demonstration, I just plopped it on top. And whatever color you have available, whatever your preference may be, you can just add that to the reflector dish. All right, so that's pretty much just the magic behind what I did here. So basically, 2 lights in total. So one with the optical snoot aimed directly at the model that creates the circular shape around the model. And if you want the color around her, just add a second light. Don't aim the light directly at the model. That's going to create a nasty second shadow. So if you have a nice low white ceiling, this is going to work great for you. So just aim the light upwards, bounce the light off the ceiling, and that will project a nice even cast of color on the subject and the background. So as far as settings are concerned, I'm not a fan of sharing settings because you have different equipment than I have. So whatever worked for me on a day may not work for you because you have flashes or different types of LEDs, whatever it may be. So just to broadly explain, for optical snoot, the key light obviously needs to be much, much brighter to kind of overpower the color. And with the fill-in light, with a magenta or purple or whatever gel attached, you just want to add a little bit of light. You don't want to overpower the effects of the optical snoot. Okay, so if you have any other questions, please do so also in the comment section. Now, to kind of help me out, I'm going to use a program called Satellite 3D. So it's a program you can buy and download. It's quite a hefty price. It's about 2,500 Rand last time I checked. But with this program, you can add whatever numerous lights you want to a setup. You can reposition the lighting. You can change the light modifiers. And this program will give you more or less an idea as to what the photo will look like. So you can move the lighting around. You can change light modifiers. You can even change the pose of the model. You can change the wardrobe of the model, etc., etc. So this is a a fantastic program if you want to pre-visualize or experiment with different lighting setups. And as I said, the program will give you a good idea as to what the photo will look like. So just to give you a bit of a tour here. Okay, so it's important to say, I should have said, but that the model needs to stand against the backdrop if you want to create that nice solid shadow behind the model. So if the optical snoot placed in position, so that's this light, you can move it around just to make sure it is where you want to aim it. Now with the second light right here, aim at the ceiling, so you can see it's bouncing off the ceiling and down at the subject. And you just want to play around with your settings on a day. So you can see if the key light is a bit too low, the magenta kind of overpowers it. So you just want to add a bit of light until you get a nice exposure. Again, with the fill-in light, same thing. Just play around and add the amount of light that you think is necessary. All right, so you can also play around with different gobos as well. You don't strictly need the circular one. So this program also allows me to change different gobos. Let me just find it. Yeah. So at CameraStuff, we do sell many of these. So you can experiment with different gobos. You can change the size. Yeah, so this is basically the magic of the optical snoot. You can use a variety of different gobos and project that shape onto your subject. And this is just one possibility of what you can do with it. And the Venetian blinds are quite a popular one as well. So if you shift it about, so if you want to create longer shadows, you can move the light more side on with your subject and just try and aim it carefully as well. You can adjust the size and defocus it if you need to. All right, so got a question here from Eugene. All right, so some people do not like shadows in photos. My view is that the shadow does give a bit of depth to the image itself, and I think that was kind of part of the magic of these images that I created. It creates this, well, as you can see, a purple shadow on the background as well. Now, this looks interesting to me. So I think it's just a case of preference, and if the shadow does look pleasing as well. I have no strong opinions on the shadow being there or not. I think it's just a case of what your personal preference may be. Okay, so that was basically the magic behind these images. So just to reiterate, that was the optical snoot used on the subject. And with the second light source bouncing off the ceiling, I added the color as well. Alrighty, so let's get on to this image. It's basically the same thing. It was just the slit gobo that was used in this case instead of the optical snoot one, and obviously just converted to black and white. So these are the unedited raw images from the photo set, or some of them at least. I'm just going to go back to Satellite 3D, and I'm going to show you more or less what I did there. Yeah, so changing the gobo to this shape right here. Just aim it carefully. Just going to give it a bit of a tilt. Go. So you can use the optical snoot to adjust the sizing and the focus of the shape that you're projecting. So you just need to get it in place and convert it to black and white. So similarly here, I used the fill-in light. Obviously didn't need the gel because it's black and white. And you can just adjust it a wee bit just to add a bit more details. Because I don't want this to be totally dark around the shape of the projection. Just want to add a bit of detail there as well. Yeah, so very similar to the previous photo, just two lights being used here. Optical snoot with the sliver, whatever you want to call it, the rectangular gobo, placed into the optical snoot, cast that onto the subject, and there you have it. With the second light source, you can just add a bit of fill-in light. You don't need to use a second light. So if you're happy for such results, then by all means, go for it. But just personally speaking, just to switch that light back on, just to add a bit of detail around the shape of the projection. Okay, so that was basically these images. Again, the magic was just the optical snoot with the rectangular gobo placed in. Again, white PVC backdrop and having the model directly against the backdrop. Yeah, so once the lights are in position, you're happy with what you see, you can just ask the model to go mad with her poses. All right, so with these, this is where I started using paper backdrops, colored paper backdrops. I also try to use a variety of different gobos as well. So just to quickly show you there, use the heart shapes, the star shapes, etc., etc. Okay, so I was a bit more experimental with this photo shoot this time around. And just to show what the setup basically looked like. So in this occasion, I used an optical snoot with a fixed lens. So that with the Godox 8600 BM. So with a flash and the paper backdrops you can see there. So at CameraStuff, we sell two sizes of different backdrops, paper backdrops, should I say. So 2.7 meter wide backdrop and a 1.4 meter wide backdrop. In this instance, I just used a variety of different 1.4 meter wide backdrops. They are 11 meters long in total. So these are great for portraits, single shots, 3/4, obviously not for families or bigger groups whatsoever. So if you plan on doing just portraits or 3/4 shots, these backdrops are definitely big enough. All right, so with model placed against the backdrop by changing the different backdrop colors and by changing different gobos as well, these were the results I managed to get. So I'm just going to go back to satellite. All right, so first thing I'm going to do is just get it back to color. I'm going to change the color of the backdrop. So here it's quite nice. You can change color backdrops here. Just to be fair, I'm going to change the size as well. Yeah, there you go. So it's very similar setup to the two previous photo shoots. So it's again just the optical snoot aimed at the model. You can position it where exactly you want. Now with the second light source, you just want to bounce it off the ceiling. If you don't have a ceiling and you want to aim it directly at your subject, maybe you can bounce it off the wall. You can get a similar fill-in light as well. Bounce it off the other wall. Okay, now that shadow looking a bit ugly now. Alternatively, you can use a large light modifier. So I'm just going to pop let's say a 120 centimeter softbox on. So you can see on her left-hand side, it's still creating a bit of a shadow. So it's not as great as bouncing the light off the ceiling. But if you don't have a nice low ceiling, if you're working outside, or if the ceiling is a different color or way too tall, you can use a large modifier as well, just to kind of fill in the light if you so wish to do so. Drop the intensity of the light a wee bit. Let's get that light back on her. Yeah, that was pretty much it. So hopefully this gives you a good indication as to what I did. So it's going to tour the studio again, so you just have a good idea as to where the light placement may have been. And also just played around with different gobos. So you can see the star shape was definitely featured in what I did. Make it smaller. So the optical snoot is indeed a magical tool that you can just be stupidly creative with. This is just one possibility that you can do with the optical snoot. So that's by having the model stand up against the backdrop, by projecting the optical snoot onto it. And if you have colored backdrops, you can add a bit of color interest to the images as well. All right, so that's pretty much it. So just going to have a tour through my slideshow again. Okay, so these were the range of images I got. This model is called Teak. She's from KIF Models. And as you can see, I just swapped out the different colored paper backdrops and projected the optical snoot, tried different gobos, different shapes as I went along. Yeah, just to see what type of variety I could get up to. And these were a couple of the edits as well. All right, so I just want to talk about flashes versus constant lights, if I may. So it's awesome using constant lights, LEDs. So just like here, if you're using LEDs, you get a WYSIWYG preview. WYSIWYG standing for what you see is what you get. So you can move the light about, you can see exactly where this projection is going. So if you move the light stand about, again, you see exactly what the light is going to give you, and you have more or less an indication as what the photo is going to look like. So similar to what I'm doing in this program, if you're using LEDs, constant lights, they are great to use because you can see what the light is doing. Now, if you're using flashes, however, if your flash has a modeling lamp, that works in a very similar way. So the modeling lamp, if that is switched on, that will just give you an indication as to where the light is going. If you're using speed lights, however, or Godox 8200 that does not have a modeling lamp, you basically have to aim and pray. So you need to aim your light more or less where you think it needs to go. Then you take a test shot, and if any adjustments are required, you kind of need to make those adjustments and then take another test shot. So make adjustments again and kind of repeat the process. So that's the great thing about using LEDs and strobes with modeling lamps, is that you get a WYSIWYG preview. What you see is what you get. You kind of get an indication as to where the light is going. However, in saying that, LEDs are not as bright as that of flashes. Flashes are way, way brighter than that of LEDs. So in these particular images, the video I took to kind of show you what I did, my ISO was around 1600, 3200, just to compensate for the lack of light. So yes, LEDs are great to use, but very underpowered. So I'm just going to show you that video again. Just going to fast forward a little bit. Just want a bit more light. All right, so the light on the left-hand side was the Godox SL60, so 60-watt LED, and the light on the right-hand side was an off-brand 100-watt LED. So these are great to use. As you saw during the course of this specific video, you can move the light, you can adjust the gobos, you can adjust the sizing and the focus, whatever. You see exactly what the effects are going to look like. But these LEDs in particular, the 60-watt and 100-watt, a little bit underpowered. I think here for this particular video, I was shooting at ISO 1600 and a 60th of a second, and aperture was f5.6, I believe. All right, so you can play around with the settings a little bit, but the point is LEDs in general are very, very weak in comparison to flashes. Now, flashes, if you have them already, a big variety of these optical snoots will work with what you have, as long as you have a bones accessory mount for it. Just the problem with flashes is that if you're using speed lights, if they don't have a modeling light, you don't know where the light is going. So you kind of need to take test photo after test photo after test photo and kind of aim and pray and hope the light falls exactly where it needs to. If you have a strobe, a monolight with a modeling lamp, that's also great. But just bear in mind, I'm just going to get my face back. All right, so this does have some ventilation. But if you're going to place this on a monolight with a halogen modeling lamp, that modeling lamp is just going to heat this up, and it's going to get very, very, very hot. Even if you use an LED, the optical snoot will get incredibly hot. So just be cautious with that. I think the first time I tried to use optical snoots, after about 20 minutes, I grabbed onto one and I think I burned my fingertips off. These things do get incredibly hot with the constant lights and even the modeling lamps. So just bear that in mind. So you just want to regulate that. So just kind of shoot for 10 minutes or 15 minutes, then switch the lighting off, allow things to cool down a little bit, or just don't use the modeling lamp whatsoever. But you prefer not to do that because then you're not going to see where the light is going. Okay, so I don't know what else to add. So if you want to compare paper backdrops versus PVC, obviously with paper backdrops, we just have a big variety of different colors available. But generally speaking, I do find paper backdrops to be the better photographic backdrop. Unless forced, they don't crease, they don't wrinkle, they don't warp. So in Photoshop, you don't need to clone out any inconsistencies to the backdrop whatsoever. However, if you do force it, if the paper backdrop does get damaged, you need to roll down that section and cut it off. Maybe recycle it, but this is why the paper backdrops are sold in 11-meter rolls. They are disposable in a sense, so once they get dirty and damaged, roll down that section, cut it off, and roll down a fresh section. Okay, so photographically speaking, the paper backdrops look the best, obviously have many variety of colors available. If you want something a bit more long-lasting, easy to clean, the PVC does work quite great. So it's a durable material. If it does get dirty, there's a bit of handy-andy and a mop will get that stains right off. So it's a bit more long-lasting than paper, obviously. So if you do expect a lot of foot traffic on your backdrops, the PVC does work very well. But unfortunately, it's only available in white. So if you want to play around with different colored backdrops, paper would be your best option. Beyond that, maybe you want to consider muslin or cotton. Cotton, yeah, that works well enough, but it does wrinkle, and I think that is the big problem with it. You can obviously steam it out, but then that leaves wet marks on the backdrop, and you have to wait for that to cool down. To me personally, it's just a bit of a faff. If you do travel around a lot, the cotton backdrops do work quite well as far as travel is concerned. Shove it in a pillowcase and get on your way. Whereas the PVCs and the paper, they are not as practical to move around, especially the PVC. The PVC backdrop is about 12 kgs, and it can't fold, obviously, like cotton. So when traveling with it, it needs to stick outside your car window, unless you have a Bakura massive 4x4. If you have a small vehicle, the PVC, when traveling with it, it's going to stick out somewhere. So just be careful not to joust pedestrians or anything of the sort. So that's just broadly the backdrop choices. So I do prefer paper backdrops. Obviously playing around with the different colors. So they are sold in these 11-meter rolls. You just need to slide them onto a crossbar, clamp it so it doesn't unroll itself, and yeah, just have some fun there. Have some fun thereafter. All right, got a question here. What is the name of the program you're using for the lighting setup? All right, so it's something you can download. It's called Light 3D. I think you can see it there in the corner. I'll drop the link in the comment section. So it's about 2,500 Rand for purchase. It is a bit of a hefty price tag, but it is incredibly useful. So just to show you a bit more around. So you can set the size of your studio so you can match it to your own personal studio. You can adjust the height of the ceiling, the width of the walls, etc. As you probably have noticed, you can change the colors, backdrops. You can set the size of the backdrop as well. So I'm just going to make this backdrop bigger. You can adjust the size of the backdrop. Also change your camera lenses for focal length as well. So you can move your camera about. You can play with different angles of light and whatnot. Okay, I'm just going to switch this light off. So that's light off. So for one of the optical snoots attached, I'm just going to play around with different light modifiers here. So you can adjust to a softbox, obviously bring some light in. Yeah, so you can see the different effects between softboxes and umbrellas. Obviously, it's not 100% accurate, but it puts you in the right ballpark. So we can see umbrella effects as well. So you can try and get in a bit of an indication as to the differences between umbrellas and softboxes and beauty dishes as well, as to what the quality of light may be. But I think this is mostly used just to give you a bit of some visualization. So if you have a plan in mind, if you want to figure out how many lights you need, where the lights need to go, what the intensities of every light needs to be, you can kind of set it up here, and yeah, you can see more or less what the photo is going to look like. Okay, I see more questions asking about the program. Okay, can you please explain a little bit more about the program? All right, so just to reiterate, it is something that you can download. It's called Satellite 3D, and I'll drop the link in the comment section in a bit. So with this program, you can place the model as well. Move the model around. It's a bit funny, but yes, it's something you can do. You can move the model around. You can also change the pose of the model. She's wearing a yay pose, grabbing a foot and whatnot. You can do so much. You can change the wardrobe as well. You can change the hairstyle, the makeup. So you can really pre-plan a photo shoot to the smallest detail in this program. So you can move the lights about, switch them on, and even add gels to the lights. So that's adding a bit of a blue color from the one side. You can reposition the lights, play around. Yeah, it's very fun to work with. So I'll drop the link in the comment section. It is a fantastic program to use. So just to kind of get a pre-visualization of what you want to do, move the lights around, change the lighting modifiers. You can change specific lighting as well. So you can set it to 300 watt, 400 watt, 600 watts. You can add speed lights as well. You can add LEDs. Yeah, and as you can see, maybe on the top right-hand corner, you can also adjust your camera settings. So obviously setting it to f2.8, that's going to give you a bit of overexposure. Going from f2.8 to f18, that's obviously underexposed. So you can kind of plan your camera settings around what you want to do as well. All right, so Krika, hopefully that gives you a bit more of an idea as to what the program is capable of. Yeah, so you can download a trial version as well. So yeah, as I said, I'll drop the link in the comment section, and yeah, you can download the trial and see if you yeah, if you are going to buy this or not. But yeah, personally, it is a very, very interesting program. All right, so in regards to the images, I'm going to get my slideshow back on. All right, so to everyone listening here, okay, I see Daniel McKnight has already dropped the link. Thank you, Daniel. All right, so in regard to these images, are you satisfied as to how I got these images? Is there something else I need to explain? So just to kind of go through it again, so the magic here was that of an optical snoot. An optical snoot you can use in conjunction with something known as gobos. So gobo, you just, whatever the shape may be, you're going to project that shape onto your subject. So these three examples, I used a circle, a big rectangular gobo, and a thin rectangular gobo. So on the left-hand side, that was used with the iris diaphragm. Let me just show you what that looks like. I'm going to get my face back. Okay. So it's like a gobo, but you can adjust the size of the circle. Okay, so that is what I used with the Godox optical snoot system to get the image on the left-hand side. Now, don't specifically need that iris diaphragm. You can use a face back again. You can use a gobo that has a circle cut out of it. So the convenience of that iris diaphragm is that you can adjust it on a spot. With this, however, you physically need to move the light further and closer to adjust the size of the circle, in the manner of speaking. All right, so the image in the middle that was used with different colored paper backdrops. So no gels in this example whatsoever. And on the right-hand side, I did exactly what I did on the left-hand side, just with a rectangular gobo and converted to black and white. So the magic here, I think, is with the optical snoot, having the model placed against the backdrop to get that nice solid shadow. I know we've had a comment of people not liking the shadow, but I think that's part of the magic in these shots, having that nice shadow there. We can do that with the model placed against the backdrop. If we don't want the shadow, just move the model away from the backdrop itself. Okay, question here from Fortune. Do you need to have two more lights in order to get good pictures? All right, so if I understand your question correctly, if you're asking about the quality of the lighting, so I think the magic lies in the light modifier itself. That provides the quality of the light. The light itself just provides the amount of light. So with whatever you're using, like a 100-watt strobe or 200-watt strobe or a speed light or an LED, that provides the amount of light that you need. Whereas the light modifier crafts the light. So if you want a soft light or a hard light, a big light, a small light, contrasty light or a flat light or even a combination of everything that I just mentioned, that all depends on the light modifier. So it is the light modifier that provides the magic. Now, there are different examples of light modifiers, so like soft boxes, umbrellas, beauty dishes, grids, etc. Anything that you place in front of the light that changes the properties of the light, that is a light modifier. So that is the magic of the look of the image is concerned. So the light just provides the amount of light, whereas the light modifier crafts the light. So it provides a soft light, a hard light, whatever you need. In this instance, of all of these images I took, that used optical snoots. Obviously, that's a little bit more intricate, but with the optical snoot, you can create these shapes. You can defocus or focus the light, so you can just be a little bit more creative with your lights. Okay, so the reason why we pay more money for certain lights is for practical reasons. So it depends on the amount of wattage that you need or the amount of power that you need. So I'm just going to get my face back. We don't need these images again. All right, so in regards to the lighting, that depends on the wattage or the power that you need. So obviously a 600 watt will cost more money than a 100 watt. 600 watts would be great for outside use. 100 watts, you can use that for indoors, but you probably need to boost your ISO to 200 or 400 just to compensate for the lack of light. Obviously, you need to talk about recycling times and the consistency of the color temperature and the color output. Is it battery powered or not battery powered? So all of these practical reasons are the reasons why we pay more money for the light. As far as the quality of the light is concerned, that is the general look and feel of an image or the light projected onto your subject. That depends on the light modifier. So soft boxes, umbrellas, beauty dishes, etc. The thing that you attach to the light, that provides the magic. All right, Daniel McKnight asking, is there a testing studio CameraStuff to try the different products like the one you used? Yes, we have. So just keep in contact with me. I think maybe I'm going to host a workshop with this optical snoot business as well. So just to give people a bit more of a real life demo as to how everything works. But yes, just keep in contact with me and we can try and arrange it for you. All right, so I don't know if you guys have any more questions. All right, so if you have questions but are not, but don't revolve around the optical snoot, you're welcome to ask those as well. So the reason why we do these live videos is to be interactive with you guys. Okay, Yeah, thank you, by the way, Daniel, for dropping the link. So Satellite 3D is what the program is called. So you can download a trial version. I think it lasts for 14 days. Yeah, see if it works for you. Okay, sorry, there's a question I glossed over here. Any do-it-yourself snoot ideas? Yeah, so you can make an optical snoot yourself. It's just there's a lot of effort that you're going to need to put in. You definitely need lenses, right? You can't use like a normal snoot without lenses. So you're definitely going to need to build like a housing that you can attach a lens to. So you definitely need a lens, as I said, because that creates the sharper projection of the gobo itself. So if you don't have the lens, it's just gonna be way too fuzzy. It's not going to be discernible whatsoever. So as far as these type of images are concerned, if you want that sharp projection, you definitely need to attach a lens to a body. And I think it's just easier to buy the optical snoot. All right, so prices on the optical snoot. So the one without a lens, so that would be this guy. I'm going to take this fella off. Yeah, so just to repeat, you don't get a front lens with this guy whatsoever. So you need to use a Canon EF lens. So if you're a Canon user already, that's good news. If you're not a Canon user, you just need to acquire a lens from somewhere. This is about 2,500 Rand just for the body. Get 6 gobos with it and some color filters as well. So it's about 2,500 Rand. I stand to be corrected. Don't take my word for it. So just check the website for updated pricing and details as to what we have available. This guy we have available, it's around 2,500 Rand, I think. So the Godox system, that is close to 4,000 Rand with the Bones adapter included as well. So the reason why optical snoots tend to be quite expensive is because of the lens. Now, so this is a proper high quality lens that you get with the optical snoot. So that's the reason why they do tend to be quite expensive, which is why the previous one does make sense, like this guy. And because it doesn't have a lens included, the cost is cheaper in comparison. So if you do have Canon lenses lying around, you can use it with that one. All right, so what lens do you need to use with it? All right, so with this one, you can use any Canon lens. So you can use a wide angle lens, a telephoto lens. If you so choose to, you can use a 600 millimeter lens. It's going to be a bit silly, but you probably want to hang around 30 millimeters to 100 millimeters. So I used a kit lens. So the kit lens, yeah, you can use a kit lens, but it's dreadful because it has a maximum aperture of 5.6. And because it has a maximum aperture of 5.6, it doesn't allow a lot of light to pass through. In fact, I do have a video explaining that. All right, so that is just the light. So no optical snoot attached. So you can see how bright everything is, right? Now I'm going to attach the optical snoot with a kit lens. So with the kit lens attached to the optical snoot, you can see how dim everything gets. So the choice of lens matters a great deal. So if you're going to use a lens with a maximum aperture of 5.6, as you can see in the video, I'm using the kit lens, it sucks the light away. So it does constrain the light, I think, if my mathematics are correct, 32 times. So if you're going to use a Canon lens, you preferably want to use a Canon lens that has a maximum aperture of 1.4, 1.8, up to 2.8. So don't use like a kit lens because of its tiny aperture, because the tiny aperture does restrict a lot of light. Okay, so hopefully that answers your question. So for Godox system, you have a choice of 3 lenses, a 60 millimeter 2.4, an 85 2.8, and a 150 2.2. So luckily a big enough aperture to pass enough light through. But for Godox system, it's you only have choices of 3 lenses. So that may be a little bit too limiting to some. But luckily, you can interchange lenses if you want to create a bigger or smaller projection. Okay, gonna get my face back again. All right, so you mentioned this as a Bones mount. Do you get one with a Godox mount? All right, so but a Godox mount, are you referring to the one with the that you get with the 8300s and the ML60s? So no, unfortunately. So it has a bones mount, and there is, okay, let me just show you again. All right, so the Godox optical snoot is comprised of 3 parts. So if you're using Godox, if you're using bones mount lighting, so any light with a bones accessory mount, you need this part. So that's called the Godox SA17 bones adapter. So you can see the bones attachment at the back. Then you need this piece. It's called the projection head, and it has the big lens inside. Okay, so that's one of the 2 lenses that complete an optical snoot system. Now then you need the lens as well, and that you just attach up front. Now this is only compatible with a Godox S30 and an X60, which is a focusable LED, but unfortunately not for the Godox mount specifically. If we're talking about the same thing, so the Godox lighting predominantly used for bones mounts. There's only a bunch of Godox lights, like the ML60, the 8300. But even if you have an 8300, you can use a speedlight mount to fit that. All right, so Kurt, I think it would be best just to let us know what you have, so we can just make double certain that everything is compatible with whatever you have. Okay, say correct here. Unfortunately, it doesn't use the optical snoot is not compatible with a Godox mount specifically. I know it gets a little bit confusing. As I said, many Godox lights use the bones mount, but Godox has now created their own mount as well, which is now featured on a couple of lights. So as I said, yeah, it does get a little bit confusing. So to anyone out there listening, if you have lighting already and you want to use an optical snoot, please do call us beforehand, message us, WhatsApp us, whatever, however you want to reach us. So we can just make double sure that it works with what you got. Alrighty, so I think I did ask a question if this satisfied all of you. So do you know more or less how to achieve this? So did my descriptions as to where the lighting needs to go, what you need to use, etc., was that all satisfying? So the magic here was just that of the optical snoot and a second light source just to provide the color. As is the case in the left-hand side, in the middle, that was a paper backdrop, a colored one, and the right-hand side, well, that was just converted to black and white. Okay, so I have this video as well. Here I was just playing around with different gobos and different gels. So just to reiterate, so optical snoot, left-hand side, that was the key light. And here I'm playing around with different gobos. So if you have an optical snoot with a fixed lens, you need to move the entire light stand with the optical snoot lighting back and forward to kind of increase the size of the gobo itself. Now to provide the color, you just add a gel, bounce pad off the ceiling. You can adjust the lighting or intensity of the light itself, depending on how vibrant you want it to be. So increasing and decreasing this light. No, so sorry, I did cut out bits and pieces of this video, so you may see me teleporting around. But here I was just messing around with different gobos and whatnot. If you are going to use gels, make sure that you buy proper gels. So not cellophane paper or anything that you wrap your fruit baskets in, because these lights do get quite hot and you don't want to create a fire hazard. So the proper leaf filters or Roscoe gels, we do sell those too, the leaf filter specifically. It's just a little bit more heat resistant as opposed to the cellophane paper. Plus they project a true color. So if you use cellophane paper, you may get a red cellophane paper, but it may project like a pink or a purple color. Whereas with leaf filters gels, what you see is what you're going to get. Yeah, so the leaf filter gels are made by guys in lab coats and spectacles, so they know what they're doing. Alrighty, so I think that's me. So if you have any other questions to ask, please do so in the comment section. I'll grab them afterwards whenever I have time. But yeah, that's pretty much me. So all of this is available at CameraStuff. Drop links as to where you can find the products on the website, etc., etc. So hope it was a good video for you. Hope you learned a lot. So that's pretty much me. Bye-bye. Ending broadcast.